Small progress can feel insulting. You finally do the thing you have been avoiding. You open the document, you clean one corner, you study for 10 minutes, you go for a short walk. You write the first ugly sentence, and instead of feeling proud, your brain says, "That's it? This is what you have been celebrating? You're still behind. You barely did anything." This is where a lot of people stop. Not because the small step failed, but because the small step did not feel big enough to respect. That is the problem I want to talk about today. Why is it so hard to appreciate small progress? I think part of the reason is that we have been trained to expect progress to look dramatic. Progress is supposed to look like a transformation, a comeback, a perfect before and after. A person disappears for 6 months and comes back rich, fit, disciplined, healed, glowing, and somehow drinking green juice on a balcony. That becomes the image of progress. So when real progress shows up, it feels disappointing because real progress usually looks boring. It looks like 10 minutes, one page, one honest attempt, doing something badly but doing it anyway, touching the task you have been avoiding. And because it does not look like transformation, we call it nothing. But it is not nothing. It is movement. And movement is where everything starts. I remember this from school. We would be given a project, and at first the deadline felt far away, so I ignored it. And then the deadline got closer, and the pressure started building. Then the last moment came, and I suddenly would engage with it. I would open the project, I would start thinking, I would try, but by that point, my brain would attack that effort. I would say, "This is it, you are doing this little, this late. What is the point now? You are already behind, you already failed. Why even try?" And when I was younger, I did not always have the strength to push back against that voice. So sometimes I gave up, not because I was incapable of doing anything, but because the work I could do at that moment felt too small compared to the work I should have done earlier. And that is a dangerous comparison because I was not comparing my small progress to zero. I was comparing it to the perfect version of the project I imagined I should have completed. And compared to that fantasy version, of course, my late start looked pathetic. But later I realized something. If I had counted those small wins, if I had respected the small progress, if I had continued even while behind, I might not have gotten a perfect score, but I may not have gotten a zero either. I may have submitted something. That is the part we miss. Small progress does not always save the whole situation, but it can still improve the outcome. It can still prevent total collapse. It can still give you a path forward. We do not always lose when we fall behind. A lot of times we lose when we decide that being behind means there is no point moving anymore. This shows up everywhere. Let's say you want to get fit. You want to start running, but you have not exercised in years. Maybe you smoke, maybe you vape, maybe your body is nowhere near the version of fitness you imagine in your head. So you go outside and you run for 10 seconds. And immediately your chest is on fire. Your shin hurts, your legs feels like jelly. Your breathing is terrible. Your body feels like it is filing a formal complaint against you. And your brain says, "This is embarrassing. 10 seconds? That does not matter. This is not fitness. This is nothing. You should not even bother." But that is the wrong interpretation. Those 10 seconds were never supposed to be a marathon. Those 10 seconds were evidence. Evidence that the task moved from fantasy into reality. But if you continue, not perfectly, not dramatically, but repeatedly, those 10 seconds can become a mile. And one day, the same person who once felt destroyed after 10 seconds can become someone who runs seriously. Not because the first 10 seconds were impressive, but because the first 10 seconds were allowed to count. That is the key. Small progress only compounds if you let it compound. If you dismiss it every time, you destroy the chain before it forms. Small progress feels like nothing because we measure it against the wrong thing. And when the first step does not match the final dream, we treat that step like failure. But the first step is not supposed to look like the final dream. The first step is supposed to break stillness. That is its job. Its job is to prove that movement is possible. But our mind often does not care about proof. It wants drama. It wants visible proof immediately. It wants the transformation montage. That is why early progress feels so unrewarding. When you first start again, the room may still look messy. The project may still look unfinished. From the outside, your life may look almost exactly the same. But something important has changed. You are no longer only avoiding, you are interacting, and that is not a small thing. Avoidance turns a task into a monster. The longer you avoid it, the bigger it becomes in your head. The document is no longer just a document, it becomes proof that you are behind. The messy room is no longer just a messy room, it becomes proof that your life is not put together. And that is why returning feels so heavy. You are not just doing the task, you are facing the story attached to the task. And sometimes the story is heavier than the task itself. Small progress matters because it weakens that story. When you open the document becomes less mythical. When you clean one section, the room becomes less untouchable. When you run for 10 seconds, fitness becomes less imaginary. When you write one bad paragraph, the blank page loses some of its power. The task becomes real again, and the problems are easier to deal with than imaginary monsters. That is why the first small action matters even when visible result looks unimpressive. It changes your relationship with the task. Before the action, the task has power over you. After the action, even if only slightly, you are back in contact with it. And contact creates feedback. You learn what is actually hard. You learn the next possible move. Thinking alone can loop forever. Action gives you data. That is why small progress is not just emotional comfort. It is information. It tells you, here is where I am, here is what I can do, here is what still feels difficult, and here is the next move. This is much better place to be than being frozen. But to get there, you need courage, the quieter courage, the courage to do something small while your brain insults it, the courage to let the first step be ugly. Because sometimes the biggest enemy is not the task, it is the voice in your head that says, this does not count, this is too late, this is too small, this is pointless. But you need to learn how to answer that voice. Not with fake positivity, not with motivational quotes you do not believe in, but with a question. Most people ask this: did this fix everything? And because the answer is no, they quit. But that is the wrong question to ask. The better question is this: did this create evidence? Did this prove I can move? Did this reduce avoidance? Did this make the task less scary? Did this make the next step clearer? Did this move me from frozen to active? If the answer is yes, then the step counted, even if it was small, especially if it was small. Because in the beginning, the goal is not transformation, the goal is re entry. Re entry means getting back into contact with the thing you avoided without overwhelming yourself so badly that you disappear again. This is why massive vistas often fail. You fall behind, you feel guilty, and then try to punish yourself with a huge plan. Tomorrow, I will wake up at 5. I will work out every day. I will post every week. I will never fall off again. That sounds powerful for one day, but usually it is too heavy to repeat. And when you cannot repeat it, you feel like you failed again. But maybe you did not fail because you were weak. Maybe the restart was too large. You tried to carry the whole mountain on the first step. Small progress protects you from that. It gives you a way to restart without turning the restart into another source of pressure. So here is what to do. First, lower the scale. Whatever you think the first step should be, make it smaller. Not because you're lazy, because you're trying to make the action repeatable. If the goal is to write, open the document and write 5 ugly sentences. If the goal is to clean, clear one surface. If the goal is fitness, walk outside for 5 minutes or run for 10 seconds. Make the entry point so small that your brain cannot turn it into a giant ceremony. Second, name the evidence. After the small action, do not just move on. Say what it proved. I opened the file. I touched the task. I reduced avoidance. I made the next step clearer. I did not stay frozen. Your brain will naturally minimize that action. So you have to label the proof directly. Third, continue before you judge. Do not judge the whole process after one small step. That is like judging a plant the day after you water the seed. You cannot see the growth yet, but the action still mattered. Small progress needs repetition before it becomes visible. You do not get the emotional reward immediately. You earn it through contact, repetition, and evidence. If you wait for progress to look impressive before you respect it, you will abandon most of the progress that actually mattered. Because the beginning rarely looks impressive. The beginning usually looks like a person trying again. And trying again is not nothing. It is one of the most important skills you can ever build. Life will not always give you a perfect start. Sometimes you will start late. Sometimes you will start tired. Sometimes you will start embarrassed. Sometimes you will start after failing before. Sometimes you will start with only 10 seconds in you. But 10 seconds is still better than zero if you let it become evidence. One paragraph is better than a blank page. One clean surface is better than an untouched room. One honest look at the problem is better than another day of avoidance. Small progress is not destination. It is the doorway back into the movement. And once you start moving, you can build. So when small progress feels like nothing, do not immediately believe that feeling. That feeling may only be your brain comparing the first step to the full mountain. But the first step is not supposed to erase the mountain. It is supposed to prove that you can move forward towards it. That is enough for today. Because today's small proof becomes tomorrow's easier start. Tomorrow's easier start becomes repetition. Repetition becomes trust. Trust becomes momentum. And momentum is what eventually creates the visible change in you that you wanted in the first place. So the next time your brain says, this is too small, this does not count, this is pointless, answer it differently. Say, maybe it did not fix everything, but it created evidence. And evidence is what I need right now. Because the first step is not supposed to change your life. It is supposed to change your direction. And sometimes changing direction is the beginning of everything. If this helped you, subscribe to the channel. I am building this series around momentum, self-trust, and the system that helps us move when our brain keeps turning progress into pressure. And remember this, small progress is not meaningless. It is the first proof that you are no longer standing still.